One does not simply walk into Mordor.
The Land of Shadow.
Hey everybody, welcome back. In today's Shadowcast, I'm going to be focusing on part 3 of my review of The Lord of the Rings of Power TV series, Season 1. In this final part of my review, I'm going to be focusing on the 3 main ingredients to what makes a great television show. So far, I've given star ratings for fan reaction, the show's kind of response to fan reaction, the Tolkien Canon, and the third thing was I sort of stacked it up against Game of Thrones, which is its main competitor as a fantasy series. In today's final review, I'm going to give a star rating for the writing, the acting, and the overall visual presentation of the show. And then to close out the review, I'm going to give an overall 5-star rating of the entire season 1. So if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and jump into the final part of our review of the Rings of Power.
Land of Mordor, where the shadows lie.
Let's begin this review with a look at the writing of this series, which I believe is the most important aspect of the show's overall success or failure. The 2 primary writers are Patrick McKay and John D. Payne. It's my understanding that these 2 are the core writing team that have developed the overarching story through the course of 5 seasons, with other writers filling out the writing of individual episodes. You can check the IMDb site and look at the entire writing production team. These 2 have stated in interviews that they have already written the final scene of the last episode, meaning they have mapped out all 5 seasons. I personally think it was a smart move to tell the story of the Second Age and the forging of the Rings of Power. It allows for a cast of new characters while still including some we know and love from The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. The origin story of the Rings is also one that is familiar to fans of Peter Jackson's films, which we see in the prologue of The Fellowship of the Ring, which makes it accessible to the widest audience possible. Good writing is the key to any successful narrative series, but especially one that is adapted from Professor Tolkien's Middle-earth. Expectations are high because Tolkien wrote with such beautiful prose, while at the same time building a fantasy world that seemed and felt very, very real. Giza X posted in a comment that they felt that the poetry of Tolkien was missing from the series, saying, and this is a quote, "I love Tolkien more as a person who not only enjoys the epic mythology of Tolkien sought to create, but also the poetry of his writing. Tolkien was a wordsmith, someone who spent his entire life studying linguistics and the phonology of languages. Tolkien wrote in a way that painted imagery in the mind of the reader, end quote. I have to say I heartily agree with this sentiment, and it's why I reread Tolkien's writings over and over again. His words are missing from the show, and to its detriment. However, unlike the Lord of the Rings films, and to some extent the Hobbit films, the Rings of Power doesn't have much to work with in terms of Tolkien's writings. The appendices don't read like a traditional narrative. Peter Jackson, on the other hand, had an abundance of Tolkien's writings to work with, often bringing his words directly to the big screen. The writers of the Rings of Power do not have that wealth of narrative poetry to work with. Tolkien was one of a kind, an academic with an understanding of language and mythology that is unparalleled in modern writers. I think it's unfair to expect the showrunners to write with the same authority and level of poetry that Tolkien brought to his works of fiction. That said, I was hoping for more of that Tolkien feeling in the series. The writers had a difficult task. Transforming a mythological history into a compelling narrative story is not an easy task. They had dates, events, named characters, but not much else. I think we need to take this into account when critiquing the writing of the show. Peter Jackson, on the other hand, had the opposite problem. He had too much story and was able to pick and choose which narrative and dialogue to include or to cut. The things I liked most about the writing includes the mystery and the reveal of Mordor and Mount Doom. I loved the show's focus on this. I also liked the way they kept the secret of the true identities of the Stranger and Halbrand, the two opposing Maiar in Middle-earth. Season 2 won't be able to depend on this dramatic reveal, so I'm wondering what they're going to do to replace it in the story. I like the storyline of the Falahides, which stays true to canon for the most part. I love the story of Numenor, and with a few exceptions, the story of Khazad-dûm and the story of the elves and the forging of the rings. What I don't like about the writing is the dialogue. I feel like it's just not strong. Not all of it, of course, but it could use a good dose of Tolkien. It's an area that needs improvement. I'm not happy with the lineage of Durin being paternal. It definitely breaks canon. I'm not a fan of the close relationship of Sauron and Galadriel and their trip to Numenor. It doesn't break canon necessarily, but it also just doesn't feel right, though for me it's not a deal breaker. To me, the most egregious bit of writing is the entire Mithril creation story, which impacts all of Middle-earth. It breaks canon on so many levels, and it seems they used it to tie all of these storylines together, which I can understand why they did it. I just wish they hadn't. The mythos of Moria Silver's creation, the connection to one of the three Silmarils, and the loss of the elves' immortality is just a bridge too far for me. It won't stop me from enjoying and watching the show, but it takes a lot of Tolkien out of this vision of Middle-earth. So what rating does the writing deserve? It's not a simple answer for me. So this is what I'm giving it. 2.5 stars out of 5. From my point of view, the writers had a Herculean task on their hands, and the results are mixed at best. Okay, on to the acting. Some of the acting is, of course, tied to the writing and the dialogue. But for now, I'm just going to put that to the side. For me, these are the standouts. Joseph Mawle as Adar, by far my favorite. Owen Arthur as Durin IV, excellent. Lloyd Owen as Elendil, he is pitch perfect in that role. Finally, Morfydd Clark as Galadriel. The show hangs on her performance, and though I may have some concerns about the writing of her character, I think her acting skills are spot on. Other characters I really like are Elrond, Arondir, Eleanor Brandyfoot, Durin III, and Disa. For the pure fun of it and the cool kind of nature of these characters, I have to give the three cultists a nod, and I hope we see more of them in Season 2. The character most disappointing to me was Celebrimbor. I see him as a powerful and tragic figure, not the conniving and vain version we see in the show. It just does not sit right with me. The characters of Halbrand and Sauron, played by Charlie Vickers, and the stranger Gandalf, played by Daniel Wayman, have the potential to develop into strong characters who may, of course, face off against one another. We'll just have to wait and see. Most of the rest of the acting in the show was just sort of to me. There was nothing that was terrible about it, but there was nothing that made those characters stand out in terms of their acting. So, on the acting, overall, I'm giving the acting in the show a 3.5 stars. It was good, but could use some improvement. I'm hopeful for Season 2. Now on to the look and visual presentation of the show. In my opinion, it's one of the key and greatest assets. In almost all cases, it feels very much like Middle-earth. Filming in New Zealand was a smart move and builds on the visuals in the Peter Jackson films. I hope moving the show to England won't change its look. I love the look of Numenor, mirroring the Athenian architecture and look of the island is spot on. The presentation of Moria in all its splendor is pure perfection. Valinor, Lindon, Eregion, all beautiful. Even the migratory world of the Harfoots is wonderful. Then, of course, we have Mordor. I loved seeing the vast transformation from the fertile lands into a barren wasteland of ash and fire. The post-apocalyptical vision of Mordor is by far my favorite, as you might well imagine. When we see Sauron walking down into the Valley of Gorgoroth at the end of the series, I was cheering. Well done. More. We want more Mordor. So, my rating for the show's visual presentation, I'm giving it a full 5 stars and then some. In my opinion, it puts the visual effects in Game of Thrones to shame. So more of that good visual presentation will help the show maintain at least that aspect of Tolkien's world. Okay, now on to my final star rating for the overall impression of the show. And this sort of includes all the aspects that I've been talking about over the course of the last 3 videos and parts 1, 2, and 3 of this review. Sort of wraps them all up together with my overall feeling about the show. I want to begin by saying a few things. 1, I am very hopeful for the show and its progression over the next 5 years. I believe it has a great deal of potential, and I want it to succeed. I want to be able to watch a great Tolkien adaptation of Middle-earth for the next 4 years. That excites me, so I will be rooting for the show. There is no doubt about that. Secondly, the Middle-earth fandom seems to be reflecting the world at large, which is divided along cultural and political lines, not just here in the US, but around the world. Both sides want you to either love it entirely or hate it entirely. and you are expected to choose a side and say it's either a beloved show or it's trash and should be off the air. I must say, however, that the haters of Amazon and the Rings of Power are much more vocal and virulent in their relentless attacks. The world is never black and white, all good or all bad, and whenever I hear people on either extreme, I just stop listening because their arguments become suspect to me. They are promoting something other than the Rings of Power. I have heard this same feeling expressed by other Tolkien fans who have reviewed the show. We here in Mordor bow to no one, ever. Neither corrupt corporate suits or crybaby toxic fans. I say it like I see it, and fuck the consequences. So, if you are someone who believes in diversity, inclusion, and equality, I am with you 100%. So, here goes. Without further ado, I am giving the Rings of Power, here it is, a 4-star rating overall. Now, there's going to be people who will disagree with this, but I enjoyed it pretty much from beginning to end and will continue to support its proven potential to bring Tolkien's second age of Middle-earth to life. This is not saying it doesn't have flaws, but I believe over the course of 5 seasons that this is a show that will grow and improve and hopefully come back to 100% Tolkien. In one of my upcoming videos, I will pose some of the probable storylines that I expect to see in Season 2, and some of the key things I'm super excited about seeing in the show. So I hope you guys will stick with me for the ride. Okay, everybody, that wraps it up for today. I hope you guys enjoyed part 3 of my review of the Rings of Power Season 1. Let me know in the comment section what you think about the review on all 3 parts. And also, if you like the content of this video, make sure you like it and subscribe if you haven't done so already. In my next Shadowcast, I'm going to be offering up another lore video, and this will be a Servants of Shadow lore video focusing on one of our favorites, the Nazgul. So until next time, I hope to see you climbing the razor-sharp peaks of the Emid Mule.